Caca! Caca!
What's up, everybody? It's Matt Johnson. We are back with another episode of Real Estate Uncensored. This is the place where you get actionable ideas, insight, and inspiration to turn your real estate career into a life of freedom. And we've got a phenomenal episode for you today because we're talking about the real nuts and bolts of how to achieve freedom in your real estate business, starting with how you really get a handle on your assistant. If you don't have one already, how to hire one. If you have one, how to work with them. We're going to really go deep on this topic with someone who is an authority in that space. She helps people all over the country hire and manage and train and work in a very cohesive way with real estate assistants. And so we've got a bunch of fun stuff to get into. If you didn't hear it, Greg signaled me in to the show with a nice caw for some reason. I'm not quite sure. I think it had to do with the conversation pre-show about birds. And so, first of all, the junior grand pigeon himself, Greg McDaniel, what's up today?
Oh, man. The reason why I love doing this show so much with you is that we constantly mess with each other as much as humanly possible in good-hearted fun. But it's like trying to outwit the other and who can get the word in before the other one can. And so it's always a fun battle. I hope you guys have friendships like this. But yeah, dude, Kathleen, she was talking about how we're talking about bringing people in and how they're a special bird. So I immediately went up there and I started researching all the different bird types so I can call Matt a different bird variety throughout the entire show. Well, Matt, I'm not quite so sure about that, but the gulls are not agreeing with that, and
okay.
the night fisher is quite a feisty little guy. Mm-hmm. You know this. Don't be a parrot, Matt.
Right. If anybody has Netflix, go and watch the Steve Martin short comedy special, just to get a little sneak preview of what Greg and I are going to be like in 40 years. So, all right, let's bring in our special guest, Kathleen Metcalf. Kathleen, how are you today?
Oh, I'm great, and it's such a joy to be with you. What a treat.
We're excited to have you.
Smiling and laughing.
I know. Mine too. I do too already. So fill people in on kind of a little bit about your background and what you do right now, so they get a sense of kind of where you're coming from and your point of view.
Yeah, happy to. So I am a coach and a trainer for real estate agents and their administrative staff. And I have a background in recruiting and training in the retail industry, had my own consulting firm in Silicon Valley, and then started in the real estate industry as an unlicensed assistant in San Francisco, California, became a licensed assistant, and then became an agent. So I have seen both sides of the equation, and it'll be 11 years Father's Day weekend. I moved from San Francisco, California to Little Springfield, Vermont to be near my family. It's a huge transition. Okay. And of all the places I ended up working for a real estate coach who works from home, who works for a big coaching company. And I listened to her coach all these top producers all over the country. She had 65 clients a week.
Whoa.
And I could hear in the conversations, in the coaching, that they had to hire an assistant, they had to train an assistant, and they had to learn to manage an assistant while being a top producer. And so I thought, with my recruiting and training background and having been on both sides, there's got to be a way I can help these people. So 5 years ago, I started my business.
Very cool.
Here we are.
I love it.
Came out of necessity, it looks like. That's awesome.
Yeah, no kidding. Yes, and the best businesses, I think, are started that way, where you see and people ask and kind of pull that out of you, where it just matches up with your skill set and just people start asking you to do it. So there's a great question that I think leads into this quite nicely. So this caught my eye today. This is on the Lead Gen Scripts and Objections Facebook group. And guys, if you're not a member of that, go join that right now. This is from Steve Ferreira, and he says, I have a good but interesting challenge on my hands. I have 2 new listings, and I need to plan the open house schedule for both properties. We don't have enough agents in my office to cover the open houses, and my broker also has his own open houses. Have you had this issue of limited, manpower, woman power before? And how did you resolve it?
Person power.
Person power, sorry.
Person power, Matt. We've gone over this.
All right. So he gives the ideal time frames. Ideal times are between 12 and 4. So, Greg, how would you approach a problem like this?
You know what I would probably do? I would do the Glenn Twiddle method. I would go out, and I would, instead of doing, a 3 or 4 hour one open house, I would start the open house a little bit early, maybe start it at 12. I'd do a 12 to 2, and then like a 2:30 to maybe a 4:30. Spread that out a little bit, and I would get the homeowners in on this with you. So have them get the house ready for you, then have them meet you right back, right on time, so you can literally pack up all your stuff, grab all your signs, get on over to the next event or next open house, The homeowners are meeting you at the house. They have the lights on, the heater on, the air conditioning on, whatever's going to be needed. Then you do the event. They shut it down, and you can go home. You can hit out. You can do at least 2 every single Sunday, or you could do maybe one Saturday and one Sunday. You can divide that up, or maybe do them both on Saturdays and Sundays for double impact. So if your clients are thinking, well, why don't I have one big long open house? You can sell them on the fact, well, you're going to get 2 open houses this weekend, each of them for 2 hours. So you're actually going to gain an hour versus a 3-hour. Now you're going to get a 4-hour of exposure to the buyers and the buyers that are going to be on the market. So you actually look like the hero versus the villain.
Yeah, it's all in how you spin it. Yeah, Kathleen, what's your opinion on that?
Well, in terms of hosting open houses, I would presume that in most states that someone needs to be licensed. Okay. So another aspect of that is this is where having a licensed real estate assistant or having other agents on the team, if you have buyer agents or if you have a showing assistant that has a license, comes in handy, because if it's a part of their job description and they know that sometimes they will host your listings, then you have built-in manpower, person power, woman power. I did it too, Greg. Your built-in person power.
That's right.
When you have
the key is making sure that you're and the key to making that work is just to make sure that your assistant is licensed. I'm curious about that. How many out of the people that kind of come into your world do most people try to get a licensed assistant? Do they go unlicensed at first to just do general admin stuff and then realize, hey, it'd be better if this person was licensed so that they could do more things for me? Like, how does that progression usually go?
That is a really great question, because one of the determiners there sometimes are the fees that the broker charges for having another license on the team. Oh. I just talked to an agent last week where it will cost him $7,000 a year to have a licensed assistant.
Ooh, really?
Okay.
Very big investment.
That doesn't make, for me, that doesn't compute here in California. You were here in California. For us, our team manager, she's a licensed agent, doesn't cost us anything more to have her. Why does that cost $7,000 to have just a licensed assistant?
There were he was also going to be paying the fees, so MLS fees to be part of the association, the errors and omissions insurance, to be able to cover all that liability. And so, and then there was a desk fee.
Yeah, that's the killer, is the stacked on top of just being a licensed agent is the desk fee that they get from the brokerage. I've heard of that. I ran into a guy that ended up switching over to KW, partly for that exact reason, is he literally could not grow a team. Like it was almost as if they were on a mission to keep people from having help and having any freedom in their lives. They'd rather you just be a top producer that runs yourself ragged for 70 hours a week.
Right, but that's sort of a tangent in the answer to your question. There are definitely lots of agents that can have a fully functioning team with an unlicensed assistant, because most of the tasks that you really need an assistant to do not require a real estate license.
Yeah.
To be able to, manage files and talk to clients and give great, customer service, to be able to problem solve, work with vendors, because you primarily need a license in order to be able to talk about price and to be able to negotiate.
Mm-hmm.
And and in certain states, you can even host an event by you can still open the door and hand people a flyer and not have a license. And so that makes having an assistant, even more flexible for the kinds of tasks that you can have them do. Assistants like to be prepared if you're going to have them do those kind of events, which is where having a script or a checklist comes in handy. And we were talking about personality styles, because most admins like to be prepared.
Yes. Yeah, I was going to say, you're not going to just roll into the office and go, hey, John, we got an open house, chilling out. I want to do it in 2 days. I don't really know. You just here's the key. Like, I know you don't know the owners, and send them out with a pat on the butt. Like, that's not going to happen. It would just not happen.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Which I always get a kick out of, because we were talking about this pre-show, and I want to make sure that we get it across to the audience, which is that sometimes with a high producer, the very thing that makes them successful as a producer are the very things that drive the assistants nuts. And usually those are opposing personality types. So I want to get your perspective on that. If someone's listening to this and they're doing well, they're doing 25, 50 deals a year. Probably at that point, you start to look at, how you can optimize and be ultra productive, and assistant is a great way to do that. Most of those guys and gals, high D, some high I. I would say, I'm curious what your perspective is, when you run into the high producing agents that pay you to do this, what's their like personality type on average?
There are definitely successful agents that I work with in every style. There is certainly the predominance in a high D, high I agent and a high C, high S, using the DISC assessment as our measuring tool, that are more drawn to administrative work, because high S, high C is an amiable, analytical person who really thrives on process, of being stable, and of getting along with everyone. So those are great qualities to have in an administrative assistant. And for an agent with a high D who is driven to compete and to win and to get the next deal and to be hunting all the time, and someone who's a high I who has a lot of charisma and attracts clients, right? These are great ways of being able to categorize these successful people. But I have been with a high I agent with a high C assistant, and the conflict was too great because the agent moves so fast, the assistant wasn't able to really keep up with that. So I just approved a candidate yesterday for a client who's an amiable agent, and his assistant is a little more expressive, but also an amiable, and has great admin experience and no retail experience. I mean, no real estate experience. So she's going to need to get up to speed about what's an appraisal and what's a contingency and what's a disclosure. So she's going to need all of that education, which as a preemptive is why I published my online training program, because I saw all of these agents that needed to bring in administrative skills and needed to bring in that kind of character. Learning what an appraisal is and about the industry can be taught, but you have to buy those other skills. You have to buy that they stick to a calendar, that they are flexible, that they have good character, that they are honest, and that they know how to turn on a dime and be, turn from priority from one to another. You can't teach that. But you can teach really. Yeah,
and I think that's one of, and Greg, you probably agree with this, that it's very tempting, like if we're running 100 miles an hour, very tempting for us to go, look, I have to have someone that's licensed. I have to have someone that's been in the business, that they know how to run a transaction and all this stuff, just because we're trying to not have to, we're trying to take a shortcut essentially and get around having to train them on the real estate side. And Greg, I'm curious what your experience was when you guys brought Eileen in, if she was the right character, and then you guys trained her on real estate, or how she came in. But I definitely think it's something that we have to be aware of, that there aren't always, like, shortcuts always have downsides. Let's put it that way.
That's because there are shortcuts.
Yeah.
Kathleen was describing the S's and the C's. Go over the attributes of the S's and C's again really quickly, because I have a thought pattern on that.
So an S is, the nickname for that is an amiable, and they usually get along well with everyone, clients, teammates, customers. And a high C is analytical, so they love process and follow for compliance.
Those sound like great attributes in a girlfriend or wife. Gets along with everybody and has a process to keep my dumb ass in check. Perfect. You just found my future girlfriend. All joking aside, though, when we brought Eileen on, and she came on, and she was brought in by actually one of my ex-girlfriends who worked with us in the office. And she came in, and they were both working admin. They worked really well together. Eileen then wanted to go and do a door-to-door sales. She learned that was not for her very quickly. Came back. Thank God we had an opportunity for her. She came back and joined our team. And she's so smart. She just sat there and picked it up like that, because her strength are processes. She's an S and a C. You do not want to put that woman in front of a camera. She will kill you. I've done it. I've been clawed to death. I know how this feels. But she was such a good teammate. She still did it. But yeah, she learned the business very quickly. But she thrives behind the scenes. She thrives in keeping me in on track. I mean, honest to God, Matt yells at me all the time about this, but without Eileen, there's no way our team could survive. Absolutely. We would disintegrate at the core. She is so valuable to us. And because we appreciate her so much, we pay her, quite a bit as well, because she deserves a lot of money for what she does. And I think that that's another thing, and Kathleen, I'm sure you're going to agree with me. But I mean, when you find a good assistant, and I'm not talking good, I'm talking great. I'm like, they finish your sentences. You say, hey, Matt, I need this done, and you say it once, and you can literally set it and forget it, and you're out of there. That is worth $100,000+ a year in my market here. So, I mean, how hard is it to find that person? Everyone always asks me, how did you find Eileen? I'm like, she's manna from heaven, dude. I don't know. She just fell down, and we're good. We're blessed.
Really, you manifested her in your set intentions.
Yes. Thank you, God.
There is some of that. I tell agents that talking about compensation for an assistant is very much like the way you talk to your sellers about listings. So what is the location of the home? What are the features? And it's worth what a buyer is willing to pay for it, but it has a market rate. And it is the same thing in the employment realm for compensation, because there is a location, and that determines some of the range, and from high to low of where you are in the compensation world. And then there is a market rate for the skill set that person has. But it always has to make sense inside your business.
Yeah.
In the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, right, Gary Keller's book, he says that 11 to 13% of your GCI you can expect to be paying in payroll.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. That pretty much falls in line with what we're doing with Eileen, almost right on the point.
And then that would become, for all of the different payrolls, depending on what kind of positions you have on your team. And then I tell agents who are just starting out getting an assistant, like they're at the 25 deals, 30, 35 deals maybe, and depending on their market, what that looks like in GCI, that they might be closer to, if they earn 10 times what they pay their assistant, they're in really great shape. If they make 5 times what they pay their assistant in the beginning, can be acceptable depending on what your other expenses are, but you don't want to stay in that position. So if you pay $50,000 to an assistant and you're making $250,000, well, you want to get to 3.25 as quickly as you can, which is why you got the assistant. So from that perspective, sometimes it can feel like the cart before the horse, but if you don't have the cart, you can't carry as much. So you got to get the cart at some point. And it's just got to be a cart you can afford for long enough, before they repossess it. You know what I mean? Like, you just so that you can make
hold the cart long enough so they don't repossess it.
Yeah, you just got to get it long enough, and with security in mind, I tell agents you should have 3 months of payroll in the bank, because your business could dip, and that if
from
you
the
stop
security for the assistant,
right, that you're going to be able to get back and not have to fire or lay off your assistant because now you're panicked or out of money. If you have a 3-month nest egg, you can get through there and realize you got to get back on the phone. You got to get back to make something happen, and in 90 days you'll have cash.
Kathleen, back in 08, 07, when that dip happened for all of us in the business, there was a couple of months there. I mean, Cherry, Chris, and I were working so hard, it hurt. But we got hit by that downturn really badly. And I've told my story a million times, but we at one point were paying Eileen out of our own pocket. We were paying to go to work. But we knew that she was so important to us that we had to keep her in our business. We couldn't just cut her off and just put her in the lost category on our P&L. Like, well, she's out of here. Goodbye. No, we paid the money, and you know what? She's been with us, and we couldn't have been happier. So, I mean, in my personal experience, you might not teach this, but what I have found is that when you have someone of that quality, you do whatever it takes. You take out a credit card, you take out a line of credit, you do whatever you have to do to keep them, because if they're going to make you profitable, if the whole market is taking a gigantic Cleveland steamer on you, you know what? That's okay. Take the money out and just move forward, because once the market comes back, that individual is going to be priceless, because they're already there, they're in place. You don't have to retrain or re-interview or whatever. I mean, do you agree with that theory, or Greg, are you just out to pasture? Your loon tunes.
Those are personal business
Matt,
decisions.
shush.
Because those are personal decisions about how far you're willing to take something, but I can hear in the way you describe that your commitment to being able to, generate at the level that you needed to in order to be successful. You were totally determined. I can hear that in the way you describe it. So from there, making that kind of personal commitment decision makes total sense. But there is a great value in retention. That when you do have talent, to recognize that that talent has enormous value and that turnover is very expensive in so many different ways. And from an economy standpoint, the average unemployment rate is 4 to 5%. It is 3% in some areas. The Bay Area has very low unemployment. So what does that mean? That means that this is a market where if you find talent, you may have to pay a premium for it because it has people have choices, and real estate agents who do not have health insurance and do not have retirement benefits may or may not think about paid time off for people, whether we like to think about this as entrepreneurs or not, right? Because we have to give those things to ourselves. But that's the competition. It's sort of like, the person who comes into a neighborhood, a buyer, and sees a listing and wants to be able to have granite countertops. Well, that has a price. And it doesn't, it's not the cost of the same as Formica. And so if you want that, then the buyer needs to ante up and pay for that. And it's the same kind of idea in compensation for hiring someone, that if you want a certain skill set, then, what does that cost in your market and who are you competing with for this talent, and being able to do that.
Well, speaking of that and the other options that they have, I just real quick question before we dive into the rest of the conversation. I'm just curious, like, one of the big fears that people have of hiring an assistant, and it's not just agents. I mean, I encounter this in other worlds too, is just the fear of bringing them on, getting used to having them, and then they leave. And so how do you deal with kind of that fear, and what can you do? Like, what do you tell people to expect when it comes to retention? Do you tell people to expect that person to be there for only a year, maybe 3 years if they're really good? Like, what is there any sort of expectation that you have based on what you've seen in real estate?
Yes, the national average for an administrative assistant across industry is 2 years.
Really?
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
You're 13 years overdue, I think.
I am. Yes, we're 12 years deep together. I'm like, I beat it by 10 years. This is fantastic news.
Yes.
Well, I mean,
you're not an easy person to deal with.
Oh, shut your face.
I should know. I've only been with you for 3 years.
Shut your bird beak.
So 2 years is the average across all industries. Have you seen that? Is it worse in real estate? I'm guessing it's worse in real estate.
I have seen fast turnover, but I have also seen teams like what you're describing, Greg, where people have been together 5, 10, 15 years, because once you get that rhythm of working well together and there is a fair compensation, then the person wants to stay, because real estate is fun and exciting. Being a real estate assistant is a fabulous career in the right scenario. And so that's where building a business and building a team is where you're creating that kind of partnership, as opposed to using an assistant like a vendor that is sort of disposable.
Yeah. So here's a question for you. If you don't have the liquid capital to hire the quality of assistant you need, this is kind of off the cuff. Have you seen agents go out and charge an administrative fee per deal, $500 to $1,000 per deal for an administrative fee? So if they're doing 2, 3, 4 deals a month, or whatever it is, on the lower side, they can pass that cash directly onto their assistant as a bonus. I mean, or just that's their compensation. I mean, they're incentivized. They have a base pay, but then every deal they help them get, or every deal that's put through their team, they have $500 to $1,000 that's an administrative fee. Here you go.
I have seen all kinds of combinations in compensation packages, depending on the assistant. And depending on the state you live in, because you also want to be compliant to the labor law of where you live, because getting audited is no fun by the IRS or the Department of Labor. And so in terms of having...
What, you don't like... I love being audited. I mean, come on, that's a party. I mean...
You are an auditor. word. Yes, you are special.
It's a shoebox
special.
where Greg pulls all the shoe boxes out of the closet.
Right.
Here,
So if you have an
my
assistant
shoebox.
who is very stability minded, right? Because a high S, high C are usually not risk takers.
Right.
So they need stability. But you can have a discretionary bonus that isn't a set amount, but you can pay them more, when you have a good deal. You can have even a small bonus of $25 or $50 for every transaction. So as you increase the volume, they are getting a benefit from that. It's not just more work. I talked to someone I coach, a director of operations this week, and she and the primary agent took away that bonus for her this year, and they agreed upon that. And she said, now I can see that I actually really liked having that bonus, because the more volume they did, the happier everybody was. Like, yeah, let's do this. Yeah. So there was a big benefit to that too.
Yep.
Oh, we do a significant bonus to Eileen per deal. And if she does additional work behind it, we even up it again. We're talking there's a comma involved. And she is incentivized to work her tail feathers off. See, bird reference. See how that worked? But to work her tail feathers off to make sure the deal goes smooth, and because she's vested heavily in the deal, and that's what truly makes us work so well together. It's not just the partners making money. No, she's got a big stake in this deal, and that's what's worked for us well. So yeah, just as a testimony, that works well for us here.
Yeah, I love it. And part of what you're also describing is a trend in the industry, is to have that director of operations person, to have someone who is really in the business, helping to run the business. And I've been reading Traction by Gino Wickman. I don't know if it's a book that came out a few years ago that talks about having a visionary and an implementer as you're building your team. And that is the perfect symbiotic relationship in a real estate agent that really wants to spend 80% of their time doing the acronym PLAN, prospecting, lead follow-up, going on appointments, and negotiating contracts. If that's how you want to spend 80% of your time as an agent, then you have got to have a team that is watching the numbers, watching your expenses, taking care of your calendar, handling, client relations, and then you can scale together. But that's where that comes in, because really great assistants that love to be in the operations do not want to be agents. They might like the industry, but they do not want to be in sales. Just like the experience you were talking about with Eileen.
Oh, you're speaking like you know me. I am plan. I mean, that's where I want to spend my day. Paperwork, oh hell no. Dealing with nitty gritty shit, my backbone just quivered. Just if there's a problem, I'll solve it. Just give me what the problem is. Thank you. Was it Milli Vanilli, or is it Ice? Who was that, Matt? You're an artist.
Vanilla Ice, give me a problem, I'll solve it. I think that was Ice Baby.
Yeah.
You just quoted Ice Baby. That's a first. Wow. All right.
Oh man. Be last.
Yeah. That's. I want to go back to something that you guys are talking about with the admin fees. Greg, you asked where do you get the money to pay a bonus per transaction? I just wanted to point out. So Jeff Cohn, who I run the team building podcast with, Jeff charges, believe it's $3.99 admin fee for their buy side deals. I think it's $9.99 on their sell side deals. Now I think they don't take, like in the Midwest, we still have, like especially in Omaha, there's still a culture where some of the listings are taking at a full 7%. It hasn't quite come down to where the average is 6%. But I think they're taking a lot of their listings probably around 6%, and then they're charging that admin fee. What that admin fee does for them is it literally pays 100% of all of their admin costs for the entire team. They have 50 agents, and every single deal, just that those fees pile up, they go into an account, and everybody's salaries on the admin side comes out of that account. It works beautifully. The team can literally scale infinitely up because he's got the lead gen costs covered mostly by vendor partners on one side. He's got the admin costs covered by the actual clients themselves on the other side. And so literally what he's paying for is mostly just commission splits in the business. I mean, it's a genius. He's a freaking genius. But I just want to point out, for those of you that don't think you can charge an admin fee, man, think again. Good Lord. And that's in Omaha. That's super conservative. There's nothing progressive about Omaha or the way that, like it's very, very conservative, very slow moving. And if you can get away with charging 6% with a $9.99 fee to a seller on their $110,000 ranch, you'd be surprised what you can charge. And Greg, you've always kind of balked at admin fees on top, but I think you guys have a small brokerage fee on top, don't you?
We used to. We don't anymore. So I mean, it's something to consider. I'm also pimping Eileen out to our California EXP team, and I do tell her I pimp her out. She gets a kick out of that. And if you're on our EXP team in California, dude, it's going to cost you $1,000 per deal, but she'll run the deal for you. She'll handle all the nitty-gritty bullshit that's in the middle there that just sucks up your time and your life, and she will literally just get all the paperwork, look at all the the contracts, all the inspections and everything. She'll look at the request for repairs. She'll highlight the part of the inspections that I need to read. She'll hand them to me. We'll be on the phone, but I'll be talking to the client, and then she will be literally typing away, filling in the request for repairs right behind me. And then we blast it out. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, $1,000 to take all that paperwork away. I'll take two to go. Yes. Alrighty. Thank you very much.
Especially when you pass the cost along. But I want to get into the conversation about freedom, because really where we struggle, I mean, this all sounds great and it sounds amazing to have an Eileen. Like, we would all like to get to the point where we have that. And I'm very fortunate to have that in my podcast business too. I have an amazing director of operations that we literally hopped on a call this morning with a client, and he said to my director of operations, I don't worry about what you're doing, like, ever. Like, you do everything perfectly. Even the esoteric stuff the minor little adjustments that I want you to make, like, that's music to my ears. That means I don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. So I'm very fortunate to be in Greg's position too, to have that person. But
me too. Hi, Athena.
Do you really? She's right. But I want to talk about how to get there. Which is the freedom that we all want, right? Because we're all the entrepreneurs and we're all the visionaries. We want to be the visionaries. We want to be up here in the clouds and stuff like that. But at some point, we do have to come down, and we have to establish some systems and some other things, which is what gives us the ability to have freedom. Greg, I know it's a dirty word, systems.
It's a dirty word.
Well, let's talk about, Kathleen. Let's talk about the process of just how do you get that person up and rolling, and what are some of the things that you need to do to get to the point where you have the freedom?
There does need to be a system or a process. I know, Greg.
There's so many S words. I can't take
it. Vampire. It's like a vampire stepping into the sun. He's like,
yay!
So hopefully we can protect the agent from having to be involved in it very much.
Yes. Well, that is part of what you guys do. So that does help.
But to have something that people rely on that isn't their memory, and isn't just their know-how, like they know how to do a transaction, but there's no consistency, because that's also just not smart as you scale. So you want to be able to be consistent as you send out communication, as you have timing for certain things. And with the technology available today, there's so many ways to be able to automate, set it and forget it, and be able to manage that. So it does take things like checklists, email templates, procedure guide, a policy manual. And when you have those things in place, Matt, you and I talked about this a little bit beforehand, is then if you have turnover, you don't lose the brain trust of how your business is run with a person. You have a system that is inside your business where life happens. I mean, even if it was turnover for a great reason, someone decided to get married and move away, then that means you can still potentially hire someone, have your person train them, and then they have something to follow. But that does take a period of time, where the analogy I use for this with my clients is it's like changing the tires on a car going around a racetrack. Because you still have to do deals, right? You're still managing transactions while you're building this foundation. It's not like you're going to stop and take 6 months off and build this and then get back on a horse. Like you've got to do this at the same time. And when you hire an assistant who is going to build those systems for you, that is something to interview for. It's also something to interview for, do they have ambitions to be an agent, to be in sales? Because that is something to screen out. It's very similar to pre-qualifying a seller or a buyer about their motivation to sell their home. if you find out, well, they don't really have a lot of motivation and they have unrealistic expectations, do you want that listing?
No.
So for candidate screening, same process, different, variety, where you're screening, do they know how to build systems? Where have they done that in previous jobs? How do they do that in their own life?
Yes.
I've used effectively the interview question. Tell me how you organize your closets. Tell me how your kitchen is organized. And if you get my kitchen is really small and I got stuff everywhere, your office is really small probably and stuff's going to be everywhere. So people are not two different people, right? You need to screen for that.
Oh, that's so true. Oh, man. Greg, ask me what my closet looks like.
Matt, what does your closet look like?
Well, Greg, my closet is monochromatic. I only have 3 colors in my closet, black, white, and gray.
I actually would believe that.
All of my hangers are identical.
No, they don't. No, are you being serious right now?
I am being serious right now.
I have like a dumpster fire of a closet.
Which is weird because we're both high DIs. If you did us on the disc profile, I think both of us are 99D, 99I. So it is interesting how other things like other values play in, right? So Kathleen, I'm a high D, high I, but I also have on the values part of a disc profile, I'm a high aesthetic. Mm-hmm. So even though I don't want to be organized, I want the result of being organized so bad that I will force myself to be organized so that I have the look.
So it's aesthetically pleasing to you.
Aesthetically pleasing, and I like calmness and clarity. And so I'll put up with all that stuff. Like I'll build the systems in my life to be organized.
Good for you.
But it's interesting because you talk about people having sometimes a little bit too much ambition, right? So this is if there's any strain in Greg and I's relationship is that if Greg was to build a business, Greg needs a true integrator, someone who's only focused on the operations. I can do it. The problem is I also want to be out front with Greg teaching, training, consulting, coaching, yada, yada. So there's a little bit like that when we have friction in our relationship, it's usually because something like that, like it's because Greg wants me to do something that if I was just an operations person, I'd be fine. I don't want to just be the operations person for the team, and so therefore I have to hire somebody else to do the stuff that Greg wants me to do that I don't want to do that I want them to do. So it's kind of funny how that the interview process is so important to try to find as much of that out.
Yeah, and that's when you become grumplicated. Is when that takes place.
I do get complicated when Greg tries to put things on my plate that I don't want on my plate. That's I promptly hand the plate back to Greg and say, "Fantastic!
Yes, I know.
Find a way to hire somebody to do that." And then the thing proceeds to not get done.
Then I'm like, and we're out. And next subject.
That's right. Mm-hmm. That's right. But I want to bring it back to birds because first of all, it's fun, and second, because we have to explain why we started this episode with a caca. So I want you, Kathleen, go into the whole thing about agents being birds that swoop in.
Well, one of the things that is perhaps special about my coaching is I really try to show each side of the equation what is special and valuable about the other. So I work with agents on having appreciation for the fact that their assistant's supposed to be different, and with assistants on how that special secret sauce that is what's making their agent successful is sometimes the thing that the assistant wants to change. Yes. And so I've used the comparison that agents are a special bird. So high eyes, I sometimes describe as hummingbirds because they're, got a lot of energy and they're all over the place. And so, but if an assistant wants to capture it and hold it tight to get it to finish a sentence, finish a thought, delegate completely, but you can't. You have to let the hummingbird fly like that, and some agents are more like, a falcon who, flies down and catches live prey in the middle. Like they are just really, incredible at getting new business. And so they're just bringing in a deal and handing it off. But that's why you have a job is because they're special like that. And so it does mean as the administrative support person, there is to gain a flexibility, a versatility, just like in sales, right? So in learning to be a successful listing agent, you gain versatility in how to handle different kinds of sellers. As an administrative professional, it is about gaining the versatility to learn how to work with that style that's so different from yours in your agent, and not resent it, not want to change it, not want to capture it, but really be able to work with it. So I'll talk to assistants about the fact that if your agent, doesn't like to have meetings, like they don't want to talk to you for 30 minutes, nothing personal. So that means you have to have a very organized list and be able to zoom in, get information, and zoom out so that works for them, but you still get what you need. When I worked for the real estate coach, she's a high D, and she had 65 clients a week, right? So I had 2 30-minute breaks with her a day, and one of those she ate lunch, had to go to the bathroom and be able to return some emails. So I usually had 11 minutes. But it was such fabulous training.
Yeah, that's so
because
funny.
I had my list, and I would stand in front of her. I would raise my hand and say, I have 16 questions. And she would say, okay, go.
That's awesome.
Go, fire.
I love it.
Get it done.
And I would go through my questions, and then I would, get my priorities confirmed with her. This is what you want. How do you want me to handle this? Did you hear back from them? This is what you need. Okay, great. And so then we'd be like, all right, only took 9 minutes. Okay, so what do you want to talk about now?
That's right. Yeah, now we can kick back. We can go on vacation. It'd be great. That's awesome.
Oh my God, that sounds like a dream meeting.
They have enough time for a nap and a shower, so
right.
like rock and roll.
Oh my God! So you're describing my perfect meeting if I could ever have one. It's like, all right, fuckers, we got 28 minutes, no messing around. Here are the bullet points. Answer. We got extra time. Good. See you later. I'm drop mic. I'm out. My dad, as much as I love the Grandmaster T. Diddy, me papa, he's a pontificator, and he will just go on and on and on.
He's a pontificator. Oh man!
And then he'll go over here, and then he'll get real serious about something, and then I'm like, oh my God! For the love of Christ, can we just get the meeting over with and get back to work?
And it's funny because now meeting your mom, I know where you got that. I know where you got that. All right, let's get on. Like, come on now, let's get it moving here. Come on, like your mom is
she
exactly
writes
like
the
that.
meeting notes. Oh yeah. So Kathleen, here's a question: how can an agent tell an assistant without being rude and not hurting their little snowflake feelings? Everyone's special. I get it, but you drive me batshit crazy. How can an assistant tell an agent, look, I can't work like this. I need it to be done like this for me to assist you? Because they want to keep their job, so they don't want to offend them, right?
Yeah.
How do they do that?
Part of that needs to happen in the interview process. This is what works for me. These are my pet peeves. And this is where, going back to the book Traction, having a vision for your business, the kind of values that you stand for, and sharing your goals about where we're going in the business is so important for the operations people to know that. Because they need to sign up for what that is. And once they sign up for that environment and say, okay, I'm in, then you can have a conversation just like what you did. You can say to your assistant, you always want to criticize or give constructive feedback in private, and you want to give praise in public. So that would be a one-on-one conversation behind a closed door where you say, okay, I got to give you some feedback. This is working for me. This is something I need you to change. Nothing personal, but this is, what we need. Can you do that for me? And then they say, oh, sure. I didn't really know that, because most assistants are flexible and accommodating. And then, okay, we're good. And so you can open the door and go back to work.
Yeah, there's an interesting thing that I feel like a lot of agents, not just agents, but any entrepreneur struggles with. And it's funny because I've literally had this conversation with my director of operations yesterday, which is this challenge. The challenge of going, okay, there's something that needs to be done. It does not fit into my personality or behavior to do it naturally. Right? Which we run up against this all the time in business, right? Like XYZ needs to be done. I don't want to do it. It doesn't fit in naturally to what I want to do. It doesn't fit in my routine. It's driving me nuts. Like I would have to change who I am to do this task. And there was a great, I think it was actually Greg, it was Jay from WiseHire, the CEO of WiseHire, that said this. I think he showed this a little graph about this. That the entrepreneurs that are the most successful are the ones who don't try to change themselves. They try to find a different solution to the problem, and especially for successful entrepreneurs, they find a way to delegate it in such a way, or by delegating it to the right person who is a good fit for that task. They don't just go back to themselves and beat themselves up and try to go, okay, how can I change my own habits and behavior? Like if I could just tweak this one thing, like maybe I would want to do it. And that came back to me yesterday as I was asking my operations director about a few things, and he proceeded to explain to me how if he just tweaked a couple of these things, like I feel like then this would fit in like this little tiny gap in my day, and like this I could, like, no. Like you're trying to squeeze like the last 1% of productivity out of yourself. Like I've already got you 2 people you can hand stuff off to. Like the challenge is not to get you more productive and more on point. Like you're fine. Now the challenge is figure out how to get stuff down to the next level. And that's the big challenge for us all is how do we train? How do we build a system? You know what I'm saying? Like it's all that stuff. So that's what I love about kind of what you guys do is I don't have anyone that can come along and train my operations manager on how to run podcasts. There is somebody out there that can train your real estate assistant on how to be a good assistant so that you don't have to. And that's what I love about what you do.
Yes, because those things can be trained. I was actually inspired by a conversation you and I had last week, Matt, which is where do you change the tires on that race car? How do you get the time to build or update your checklist, to create a procedure manual and have a policy guide in your office? So I'm going to do group coaching from July to January and have the assistants on a call twice a month, where by the end of that time frame, they will have revised checklists, a procedure guide, and a policy manual for their team. And we'll work on that in a group setting to be able to get that to happen quickly so that for 2019, you can have those things ready to rock and roll or have them updated if you already have them. Because there are a lot of people that until they talk with and have a coaching session where they have a specified period of time where they're going to work on that, they don't work on that.
No, it always gets pushed down. There's always more urgent things. I don't know if it's more important, but it definitely feels more urgent. So
Correct.
Yeah, and that's a challenge for all of us, but I feel like it's even more of a challenge. Like Greg, you're not quite this way, where if a client emails you, like you feel this compulsion, like where you've got to get back to them right now, otherwise you're not a good person. I feel like people who are really good admin staff have that sense of like, hey, it's like somebody needs me, like I need to get to this, it's urgent, like it really bugs them to not be able to deal with things right away, which is why we love them. But it also is a weakness because then other things that we can see from the bigger picture are actually more important for the business don't get done because they're constantly taking care of the clients, which is more urgent, but it's not long-term important. And so that's where I feel like someone like you can come along and say, okay, step out of the urgent for a bit. It's okay. Like let's just take a half hour. We're going to work on this together because it's going to make next month easier and the month after that even easier. And it's very hard for admin staff to kind of think that way. They think day to day. Yes.
Well, because the other example I talk to agents and assistants about is if you don't set up the culture of the kind of business that you want to run together, like what is the flavor of, how you want, what's important to you about your business, then when you hire people, they bring their luggage of the culture they used to work in, and they unpack that luggage in your office. And they do things the way that they used to do them where they used to work because they don't know your standards. They don't know how you want to operate. And so I'll have agents say to me, why does she think that she has to answer email as soon as it comes in? Because that was the requirement in her old job.
Yep. Yeah, it's a requirement in a lot of jobs.
I've been the bridge between that conversation of realizing I had an assistant who thought that when the agent handed her something, she had to do it right away. But when it came in an email or a text, that she could do it when she had time. So it was a total assumption because that was the way she was managed before. Yeah. So it's interesting how once you set up some of those parameters about how are you going to run your business, who do you want to be, what's your brand? Right? Because most agents are a brand, even though they belong to a broker. So what's your brand? And I'm going through that identity myself of really being able to articulate, what is that? Because when you want to scale, you have to be able to articulate that.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, you have to be able to scale. You have to be able to scale your message and your core values all the way up and down. Yes. And it starts, like for those of you who are listening who are going, that's a way bigger conversation than I'm ready for right now. I think like my encouragement would be it starts with one person. And that's what I'm working with my operations director right now on, is giving him the opportunity to raise up and giving him the opportunity to take his core values and the way that he operates the mechanics of our business, right, and teaching him how to teach it to other people, which is not easy, right? So I've been through it. I'm going through it from a different perspective. He's going through it. But it really does just start with one person, right? Like the ability to scale up an organization starts with your ability to just, can you get one other person?
Yep, you and one other person.
You want to do? Can you work with one other person? Can you get them to start behaving the way you want? Can you build a system that helps them be successful? Can you get them to operate and make decisions according to your core values? If you can do it with one person, then you can scale up an organization. If you can't figure that out, then you're always limited to just being a rock star business where you deliver 90% of the value in the business all by yourself, your own time, effort, and energy. You'll never make a lot of money. Like it just locks you in. I think that's what keeps a lot of people locked into, quote, the grind. It's not the grind. It's their inability to lead someone else.
Yes, and in coaching, most sales coaches spend some amount of time on this, but this is where I saw an opportunity to contribute in my work, which is this bridge between the sales and keeping you a top producer, but also learning to be a leader and to create a business that includes having at least one other person that works with you. So yes, I'm totally in that choir with you.
Cool. All right. So how do people reach out? How do they connect? How do they learn more about what you do?
So KathleenMetcalf.com is my website, and there are 3 freebies on the homepage, one about hiring, one about coaching, one about training. You can join my mailing list to be able to stay in tune for when am I doing a group coaching, like starting in July, and we'll be having some information webinars about the training program. Well, what's your kitty's name?
That would be Sudi. She is eyeballing everybody down at the pool going, all right, what you all up to down there? This is my hood. You guys better check come through the checkpoint before I let you into that pool. You might have fleas, and we don't allow that here.
That's all right. So she's stuck in there. So on my website, is the ability to stay in touch with me. If you press contact, then you can fill out, the form and tell me what you're interested in or what you might information for. On my coaching page, you can schedule a free consultation for 30 minutes. And so I have those built in every week so that people can be able to see, what do I need, what's right for me, and what steps should I take next. And I'm happy to help.
Perfect. That's awesome. All right.
Cool.
Well, yeah. So we've had a bunch of people commenting. Some were to make fun of Greg, which is always okay. And people were laughing hilariously over the Vilna Ice reference for some reason. That was awesome. So guys, we get a kick out of the Facebook comments. We are keeping an eye on them as we go through the show. Anytime you have a question, a challenge, a struggle, a ceiling that you can't break through, we want to hear about it, especially if it pertains to the guest that we have on. So make sure that you ask your questions as comments on the live broadcast. If you're listening to this after the fact on iTunes or YouTube or whatever the case is, we are live on Facebook. Go find Greg McDaniel or go like the Real Estate Uncensored Facebook page. And then let's close out with this. Greg, what's the only reason people should ever want to talk to you?
To take time of your weekend, Matt, so they can call you and just take up all your time. That's why they should.
So the only reason to contact you is to get my phone number. Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
That sounds about right.
It. And I'm a giver, man. I'm a giver. They call and ask for it. I'll give it to them. I mean, that's just the way the world goes around. That's called reciprocity. That's not good. The only reason why you should reach out to us, well, there's several reasons, but the most pertinent reason right now is we're going to talk about EXP, guys. Look, we are recruiting for our team. We want you guys that are that are looking for a team. If you guys haven't really been talking to anybody else, but you've been watching us for a while and you guys really want to kind of figure out what we offer in the structure behind the scenes, all the value add benefits and all along those lines, please go to bookmcdaniel.com. It's right there on the screen. Go to bookmcdaniel.com. Find 30 minutes that work. And yes, I actually do want to talk with you in those 30 minutes because I had a gal hit me up yesterday. She's like, I wasn't sure if you actually wanted to talk to me. I'm like, that's why I give my fucking phone number out so you guys will call me. Yes, call me. And then we'll go into all the value add afterwards. But yeah, go to bookmcdaniel.com, 30-minute talk, EXP, us, lots of goodness, Kim Kardashian ass. That's all I'm going to say. Just come find out what all that means.
That was the bullet points of that call to action. Oh, good Lord. All right. Well, thank you, Grand Pigeon. We appreciate it. And all the bird analogies for this episode kept me quite entertained. It's one of the most fun episodes we've done in a long time. Literally, my cheeks started hurting before we were even 5 minutes deep into the episode. So this has been a lot of fun. And Veronica's commenting, what's that number, Greg? No.
402-663. I won't tell you right. And actually right on those first three. On those first six.
Anyway, guys, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We're going to put a nice little bow upon this episode. And
what color, Matt? Kathleen has to pick a color.
Purple.
Purple.
All right,
Matt,
purple bow.
Make the call.
Purple bow on this episode.
All right. As you guys know, we love you guys to pieces. We've done the show for 3.5 years and counting. We're not going to stop because we love interacting with people. We love bringing people like Kathleen to you and our other guests. I mean, the value that she has. Did we do the code for what the discount?
We did not. So I have a special discount code for all the listeners to buy the REA 101 training program, the Essential Guide for Real Estate Assistants. The code is REU Live.
Perfect.
And that will give you a 15% discount on the training program.
Yes, but it's only good. So if you're listening to this after the fact, especially from the time that the episode drops on iTunes, that code is only good for 48 hours.
Ready, set, go. Let's do this.
That's right. Exactly.
If you're watching us, get your mangy asses over to the site, put the code in, get the discount. Don't be a dodo bird.
That's right.
Yes, it's available now.
Oh, that's fun.
All right. Guys, we love you. This is why we do this. Amazing human beings like Kathleen come on and they drop knowledge bombs. If you guys caught this halfway through the middle, or if you're thinking about building a team, please go back and listen to what Kathleen was talking about. She was dropping nuggets of goodness the entire time. Even Hank came on and said that he was very impressed with the information. If Hank likes you, we all should like you. We already love you, though. Don't worry about that. Everyone else who's getting to know you, we're talking about them. But you guys, share this out. Give us a review on iTunes if that's something that you guys feel that would be helpful. Well, we think it would be. But if you guys like it, give a 5-star review. Tell a friend, and we'll keep coming back. So until next time, guys. Peace out, ninjas. We gone.